The war in Ukraine between it and Russia isn't about us. We're tangentially involved. We certainly are, but it ain't about us. It's about Ukraine. It's about the people of Ukraine. It's about their freedom, their sovereignty. It's not about any of the rest of this shit. Let's take a look. What do we got? Dozen Wrongs, Curtain, the Old Europe, Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'd actually kind of be interested. Putin invade Ukraine. Oh God, Ukraine as a terror state. Oh God. Okay. Here we'll go from 7 minutes on. I mean, can you go between 30? I'm gonna skip the just the first half. I want to hear what the Russian. I'm gonna start at Russian invasion of Ukraine. Oh, I guess it would be helpful if I didn't fucking have it muted, right? And if I had my fucking headphones on. All right, let's get it.
That several times, and I have not talked to him since about 2 years now. It's a very good question.
What's the mistakes? What the human mistakes and the leadership mistakes made?
It's a very good question. You see, what the American press has not said, and the Western press has not said, is that on February 24, was it? That was on that day when they invaded. The day before, if you check the logs of the European organization that was supervising, was in the field in Ukraine. These are neutral observers. They were seeing heavier and heavier artillery fire going into Donbass from the Ukrainian side. So they had apparently Ukraine had 110,000 troops on the border. They were about to invade Donbass. That was the plan. That's what I think.
Is he wait, okay? Is he saying that Ukraine was sending people to that many troops to the Donbass to invade Russia, or Russia? I'm assuming he means that they were sending them to the Donbass to defend their border from Russia. I'm gonna
Russia because of the buildup on the border of Donbass brought 130,000 troops to the area near Donbass, right? So you have buildup of forces on both sides, but you wouldn't know that from reading the press in the West. You'd believe that the Russians suddenly put all these men into the situation with the idea of invading Ukraine.
Well, wait a minute. I would have for me to care about that or find that interesting, you would have to convince me that Ukraine was gearing up to invade Russia, which, fun fact, we have hindsight on this. That didn't happen. The opposite did. So it kind of validates the troop movement that Ukraine made. Oh, yellow at the door. Yes. Have I seen Miso? Not recently. Have you seen River? I think last time I saw him, he ran under the bed. Maybe he's under the bed, but I don't know. Have you tried the laser? Yeah, it should be in the thingy on the table. We'll know if he. Sorry. We'll know if he pops out of somewhere. He loves his laser. He knows the sound of the laser. But yeah, like, so what you're telling me is, as Russia began to move troops to the border of Ukraine, Ukraine began to move troops in that direction too, and that's somehow news. That's, I guess I just don't understand how that's, like obviously they would do that. I don't see what's conspiratorial about that, or what's even newsworthy about it. I mean, I guess you could say that they both happened, but that doesn't really change anything, does it?
Not only Donbass, but invading all of Ukraine and getting rid of decapitating the government there, which is all assumption. We don't know what they would intend it to do.
But you, at the time, as did a lot of people, thought that all the talk of the invasion, Russian invasion of Ukraine, is just propaganda. It's not going to happen. It's very unlikely to happen.
I think many of us thought that the United States is building this up into an invasion. In other words, that is the nature of false flag operations. When you create this propaganda, they are going to invade.
Wait a minute. Now we're on. Whoa, go back 1 second.
All the talk of the invasion, Russian invasion of Ukraine, is just propaganda. It's not going to happen. It's very unlikely to happen.
I think many of us thought that the United States is building this up into an invasion. In other words, that is the nature of false flag operations. When you create this propaganda, they are going to invade. They are going to invade, and then when they invaded, the United States was completely ready, and all their allies were completely ready for the.
So wait, so because we made an accurate analysis of the possibility that Russia was going to invade Ukraine because they had already taken what's that fucking island? The island name I can never fucking remember. But yeah, like, because we made an accurate analysis, that's a false flag? Like, no, that's not a false flag. Being right isn't. I don't know what this is like. This feels like one of those America bad. So when we're right, then it's still, you still have to find a way to calculate that as being a negative or being, it's just yeah, we said it seems like they're going to invade. Nobody moves this many troops, this many like resources to a border in this way without the intention of invading the next country over. It was fairly obvious, and a lot of people said this. There were a lot of people who were like, I think, didn't Hassan pretty what's it called, like, openly make the prediction that it wasn't going to happen, and then it did. And that doesn't mean that it wasn't a false flag, or it was a false flag, or Hassan had information. He was working with the information he had. Same with everybody else. If there's a whole bunch of troop movements to a border, that kind of tells you that costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time, a lot of resources. Probably not doing that just to turn the fuck back around. I mean, that's not a false flag. That's just a reasonable analysis.
Invasion, correct? So why did Putin do that? He fell theoretically into this trap set by the United States. That here you're telling all your allies across the board they're going to invade, but
why do you think?
Oliver Stone has been pretty based for a long time.
Is it
it's just
madness?
It's really just this. I genuinely think it's just the when you've been challenging one institution. This one in the case being the United States' military industrial complex, quite frankly, our entire hegemony across the world. When you've spent your life challenging that, I think that I just think a bias builds in your mind, and an automatic bias of you're always seeing the frame as, well, what is like how is it that the US is doing the bad thing? How are we acting in a nefarious nature? Because you've always had the ears up for that, right? But plain and simple, the thing that kind of bugs me about the Ukraine stuff is it's just, we talk about NATO, we talk about like US involvement, everything else, and we're not in this. Like, it's such a weird like centering of Western hegemony. It's really funny because somebody like Oliver Stone probably doesn't appreciate the Western hegemony that the US presides over, but nonetheless continues to frame this conflict with us at the center of it. If you truly wanted to challenge that hegemony, you should want to recognize and validate that it's not about us. The war in Ukraine between it and Russia isn't about us. We're tangentially involved. We certainly are, but it ain't about us. It's about Ukraine. It's about the people of Ukraine. It's about their freedom, their sovereignty. It's not about any of the rest of this shit. Everything else is all footnotes, and all of it is contextual, and all of it is good to get a three-dimensional understanding of the entire world perspectives. But at the end of the day, it's about Ukraine. You boil everything else away, and you still come down to One country is illegally invading another. And there just isn't an excuse, no matter how many NATO demons you want to throw up there. It ain't an excuse.
Or is it
no, it's not madness.
Strategic calculation?
Perhaps. This one I cannot answer you faithfully because, first of all, we don't know what he was told. If he was indeed getting the right intelligence estimates from what...
No, it's not. No, it's not. Because Ukraine is going to fight Russia with or without us. That's what I'm talking about. Not the funding, not everything else. I'm talking about the conflict between the two sides. The raw conflict, no matter what, was always going to play out. The only thing the West is doing is equalizing Ukraine's ability to continue fighting. That's it. But like, again, that's not at the center of all of this. At the center will always just be invading country, invaded country. That's at the core of this.
What I said earlier in that essay I wrote, you would think he was not well informed, perhaps, about the degree of cooperation he would get from the Ukrainian Russians in Ukraine. That would be one factor, that he didn't assess the operation correctly. Remember this: Mr. Putin has had this cancer. And I think he's licked it, but he's also been isolated because of COVID. And some people would argue that the isolation from normal activity, which he was meeting people face to face, but all of a sudden he was meeting people across the table 100 yards away or whatever.
Solon, once again, I'm not disagreeing with you that without U.S. aid, without aid from other countries, Ukraine wouldn't be nearly as effective as it is today. But the conflict would always be happening. And that's, again, the thing I care about. I care about the Ukrainian people reinforcing their sovereignty. Everything else is DLC to me. All of it.
10 yards away, it was very hard to, perhaps he lost touch with contact with people.
So
no Ukrainian cares.
It's a very simple
on the ground about Western hegemony.
I'm speculating.
They care about defending their neighbors.
And I also, perhaps he thought in his mind that there would be a faster resolution.
And keep in mind, there would always be conflict, but that conflict only comes from one direction. It's from the east, not the west. Russia, at the end of the day, was always going to initiate this. There was not a universe where Ukraine was ever going to invade Russia. Never. That was never in the timeline.
The Ukrainian, because the evidence had been that the Ukrainian Russians, the Ukrainian army had folded so many times and that they were only backed up and they were stiffened by the resistance of the Nazi or Nazi-oriented Azov battalions. That was a factor, of course. And that is a big factor for the Russians because these people are very tough. They rush. See, what people don't understand is that Ukraine, since 2014, has been a terror state. They've been run. Anytime a Ukrainian has expressed any understanding of the Russian-Ukrainian position, they've been threatened.
What is the understanding of the Russian-Ukrainian opinion? Position. I kind of need to know that because I don't know what that is, but what is the Russian-Ukrainian position? That Ukraine is and should be still a satellite state of Russia? I don't think that's true. I'd be shocked to find out if that was a majority held position in Ukraine, but okay.
By the state. From 2014 to 2022, there's been a set of hideous murders that people don't even know about in the West. Journalists, people who speak out, liberals, people who I interviewed Viktor Medvedev, who they make out to be some kind of horrible person. But Medvedev
I have no idea who this is, by the way.
Was a very important figure in the administration of Kuchma, the first Ukrainian prime minister in the 1990s. And he did a great job on the economy. he was a very thoughtful man. If you'll see my interview, it's called Ukraine Revealed. He's very thoughtful about the future of Ukraine. He doesn't want to go back and join Russia. He wants it to be an independent country. Ukraine is independent, and he wants it to be a functioning economic democracy, more or less a democracy, if you can get that, but that exists in a new.
What do you mean there will be no sovereignty? They're going to have debts like every other country has debts. That's nothing new. Have it like debt held between countries is how a lot of our countries are tied together through the World Economic System. I don't really think that doesn't. Certainly, there are a lot of elements to how like what is it? What's the organization? What's the fucking organization that doles out a bunch of money to small countries to privatize a lot of their land? I'm sure you know it. I know you know it, Solon. I know you do. World Bank? Is it the World Bank? That feels like such a obvious name. Like they couldn't come up with something cooler. Let's just say it's the World Bank. I'm gonna make the assumption that you're right, and it was just too obvious for me to think of that. I thought it was like, I don't know, something cool sounding. Point is, like obviously the World Bank, what they do in terms of the privatization and of resources in other countries with their monetary policy to kind of help build them up, I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a huge fan of. But that's like asking me to weigh that against annexation and the authoritarian rule of another country. Those two things, those aren't comparable. I don't think it. I think that's disingenuous, or at the very least, an unfair comparison to say, oh, but you know, there's gonna have a lot of debt in the World Bank. I'm like, yeah, is that bad? Sure, but that's not getting bombed and your citizens killed. Like that's not annexation. That it's just not. You take annexation over a battleground for a proxy war? Well, understand, annexation does not mean that there is no battleground. I think what you fail to realize, or what you're failing to take into account is Russia can annex Ukraine all they want. That does not mean that there's going to be some end of the fighting. There are going to be resistance fighters in that country for time in memoriam, for like the rest of fucking time. So like we're not even talking about an end to conflict. It's just going to be a different kind of conflict. To which even then, you know, every single time some resistance group blows up a tank, every time they take any action, you know what Russia's going to say? This is NATO. This is the US getting involved in sleeper agents and da-da-da-da-da and everything else. And it's just going to turn into I don't know, something like Berlin in the fucking Cold War. It's just going to turn into this small battleground where there's claims of like constant I don't know, like fucking illegal operations, I guess. Like, but again, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it is or if it isn't. Every instance of rebellion, Russia will always say is NATO. That's what I'm getting at. Whether it is or whether it isn't, whether we gave them arms, whether we didn't give them arms, it doesn't matter. Russia wants Ukraine. That's it. That's the end of it. They want it. They're taking it. They're trying to. And we either don't help, let it get taken, and now we have essentially a civil war like relationship between, you know, within this country, within Ukraine that's now been annexed by Russia, going on in Europe for God knows how long. We're constantly going to hear about NATO secret operations and involvement, whether they're true, whether they're not. Sometimes they will be, sometimes they won't be. It won't matter. Like, there's just there is no, oh, it wasn't NATO from Russia, because that's the only thing they have, is always bitching about NATO. And again, I don't care. They invaded a sovereign nation. They can get fucked for all I care.
neutral state, which Ukraine used to be before 2014. It was neutral from 1991 to 2014. Neutral, very important. Under Poroshenko, it just immediately went into an anti-Soviet Cold War position as an ally of the United States. And my point was that it was a very dangerous place, Ukraine. People were being killed. Death squads were out there. Medvedev, they stripped him of his television stations very suddenly. This is Zelensky, the new president, said Zelensky was elected on a peace platform. Remember that 70% of the country was for him to make peace with Russia. Did he ever even try to make peace with Russia? Did he attend any of the Minsk II?
Well, I do kind of think that if you asked before the invasion, if Ukrainians were like, hey, it'd be really cool if you could like strike peace with Russia so we could live and coexist peacefully. Yeah. And like if Zelensky's like, yeah, I'd love to do that. I like, no shit. But again, what do you think their opinion is now that Russia has decided to invade? At the end of the day, that 70% or whatever is kind of irrelevant. Everybody always wants peace, but when it's not an option, then I'm pretty sure they're not like, I'd be shocked. Again, we don't have polling. I don't know, but I would be genuinely shocked if there were Ukrainians going, if Zelensky would have just tried harder, we could have gotten a peace. Like, no, there was no trying harder. At the end of the day, it was either Putin walks in and takes Ukraine, or Putin walks in and takes Ukraine like in a friendly manner. But that was it. Those were the only two options for Russia. And again, the idea that like as much as the US loves to destabilize other nations, which again, I'm not denying it's not a thing that doesn't happen. But like at the end of the day, this wasn't something that we were aiming to do. We didn't do this to Russia. At the end of the day, Russia knew there was an agreement to defend Ukraine after they gave up their nuclear arsenal. Russia knew that invading Ukraine would activate some form of what's the word I'm looking for? Resistance to their campaign. And they've also pushed other nations who are also close to the Russian border into the arms of NATO. They have quite literally fallen for the classic Yu-Gi-Oh trap card. And I don't know what to tell you. You did that. I told you this was going to be bottomless trap hole. I placed it face down, and then you attacked my monster, and now I have to activate bottomless trap hole. I don't know what to tell you, bruv. It is. It certainly is. Interest may very well have wanted this. Wanting it. Okay. See, again, you're getting tied up in what we want. What we want is irrelevant. Like, in the sense that if Russia never invaded, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. We just wouldn't be here. But they did. They wanted it more than they thought they could get away with it. They thought they could invade, get done with it quick. They were wrong about that. And now it's fucked them over. And for the US, works fine for us. Russia is not an ally of ours. So when they want to go and trip over their own dicks trying to fucking invade another nation, then, why? Like, good for us. Yeah. Like, maybe don't like invade other countries. It's incredibly expensive and difficult.
Agreements. Did he visit? Did he pay any attention to Putin? Did he go to Russia? No, not at all. The moment he got into office, I'm convinced that the militant sector of the right sector parties of Ukraine let him know that you will not make a deal with Russia. There'll be no concessions to Russia. This is very dangerous. This is where this attitude. I mean,
should there be concessions to Russia?
To Russia has hurt us. The whole world is being hurt by this, and no one calls them out. No one calls them out. Zelensky backed off. from his platform as running for president, and as president has been ineffective, did nothing to promote it. On the contrary, went the other way and seemed to support the Ukrainian aggression.
Well, he found his support in this war.
And I just don't like Ukrainian, what aggression? Like, really, what Ukrainian aggression? Did they invade? Oh, they didn't, did they? Like, I just, it always, because this is the thing, the only argument one could make from an anti-Ukraine standpoint is just that, what, they're getting help defending themselves, which I don't, considering they have allies and Russia just kind of, while they do have allies, China has not been very interested in coming to their aid on this one. Neither has India. So the question kind of becomes like, is this, am I supposed to believe that Ukraine is somehow the aggressor because Ukraine has stronger allies and has the backing of those allies, even though they are a smaller state? Am I supposed to believe that that's somehow unfair for Russia? Again, the people who initiated this invasion? No. Like, if you're, if you're at a bar with a bunch of your friends and your smallest, weakest, or at the very least, let's not even one of your friends, kind of maybe, they're not one of the big body boys, gets into a fight with some lone asshole who, gets offended from, I don't know, you all being loud or something. And, that guy picks a fight with your friend. That's on him when the rest of you show up and go, hey, there's like 5, 6 of us. It's like one of you. Like, this ain't going to work out for you. Just move along. And if that guy wants to continue to fight, then, that's on him. But that's his fault.
You've revealed through your work some of the most honest and dark aspects of war.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, this is a war, and there's a humanitarian crisis. Millions of people
created by Russia,
refugees escaping Ukraine. What do you think about the human cost of this war initiated by,
at the moment, Ukraine,
whoever,
and the
just as you
merits of our
whatever the
support
context
for them, I suppose,
whatever NATO, whatever pressure, as you wrote, Russia was wrong to invade.
Okay, yeah. Let's get back to the original question. You said, what was he thinking at that time? We never answered that.
Yeah.
Now,
well, unfortunately, we can't really know that.
By the way, among those people who've been ruined by this war, you have to include the 2014 to 2022 Ukrainian Russians. 14,000 were killed, not necessarily.
Ukrainian, is he talking about people who identify more with Ukraine or identify more as Russian in Ukraine? I have news for all of those people. It's called get a U-Haul and move. I've never understood this argument where it's like, oh, but there are people who culturally or whatever identify more as Russians, which that's fine. I got no problem with that, man. Like, identify however you feel, man. I'm a very, I'm a progressive. I'm a leftist here. All identities. I'm cool with it. But like, if it's that serious, then maybe move to Russia then. I don't know what to tell you. You can't bring Russia here. That's not a thing.
By some of them by maybe accident and this and that, but certainly a large number of that is responsible to the Ukrainian military and the Nazi-related battalions who have done a good job of death squadding that whole area. And remember, I did a film about Salvador. I know a little bit about death squads and how they work, and I know about paramilitaries because in South America, they're all over the place. America hates Venezuela.
Okay. We're kind of getting into the death squad stuff, which I'm going to, and also I guess they had to do, did Putin visit Ukraine? What was Putin? Didn't they already do what was Putin thinking? Why did Putin invade Ukraine? What Putin was thinking? Okay. Which we can't know that because at the end of the day, we're not mind readers here. saying, hey, there's a whole bunch of Hungarians in southern Slovakia. That's it. Yeah, it's like, come on, like that's not how this works. You know, it's as a native Virginian, no, there's nothing I want to bring from Virginia here. Maybe the better transit system. Denver's transit system could need help, but like, yeah, that's not how that works. You don't drag you don't drag the borders of your country when you leave it. That's not how that works. But yeah. Look, Oliver Stone. There's, like I said it earlier, and to like kind of wrap up the whole thing about the Ukraine conversation, especially on the left. There are people who have spent their entire lives. Noam Chomsky was the other example that War Knight brought up. But Noam Chomsky, well-known leftist thought leader, thought leader. Well, yeah, I guess thought leader. But Noam Chomsky has spent his life, same with Oliver Stone, in opposition to Western hegemony, in opposition to U.S. military, industrial complex, aspirations. And because of that, in this conflict, the way that they frame it, I think, is not about the conflict between these two nations, but they see it through the lens of who's benefiting in this. And is the military industrial complex here in the United States benefiting? Absolutely. Absolutely. It'd be a lie to say they're not. But what we have to always remember and kind of weigh in this scenario is these guys are going to make money. What are we okay with? Because like a military industrial complex, a industry made there to make military arms, they will always exist because we will always have war. That's just kind of something that we're always going to have, right? And the question becomes, how much do you let them control? How much do you allow them to, I think, influence foreign policy? But also, how much are we like, what's the word I'm looking for? Tolerable of them making money for causes that are okay, that we can say, all right, I don't love them making money, but if the consequence of Ukraine being able to defend itself from annexation is some contractor guys here in the US get a bunch of money, I tend to think, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, that's a trade I'm kind of okay with. Because I care about like people and the well-being of those people, and I care just a little bit more about an individual nation's sovereignty over, just another good day for the weapon manufacturing boys. They always have been doing fine. At least now that they're creating all of these arms, at least it's going to something that I can say, all right, this is probably a case where I can be okay with where those arms are going. It's just, we just have to make these calculations. It's not as simple as never let them make money, never let them sell arms, never do this. They can't do it. Like, it's just, we got to work in the systems we have. We got to work with the resources we have. And quite frankly, Ukraine needs them. And we have the ability to supply them. So, to me, it's just, this was, and at the end of the day, the fault for this will always, to me, fall on Russia. This was unforced, unnecessary. And, I said earlier, let them trip over their dick trying to invade somebody else. That's on them. If this teaches any lesson across the world, it's don't invade other countries. It's very cringe. You will not like the outcome. The thing that they tell, like at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to like click on one of these like things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to film one.